Welcome to the Next Level Casino Careers Show, a series highlighting industry tips and insights from the best minds in the casino and hospitality industry. Enjoy the show.
Lawrence Vosloo, otherwise known as LV. How are you doing today, LV?
I'm great, Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing well. To start, I want to thank you on two fronts, LV. One, just being so gracious to take the time today. I know you're a busy individual with lots of responsibilities, being the CEO of the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians. So number one, just thank you for taking the time. And then also two, I want to thank you and the leadership team and the tribe for making platforms like this possible. I know it's so in the DNA and the culture of education and what I call, seek knowledge, spread knowledge, and really trying to provide information, stories, insights from people like yourself to not only people within San Manuel and Yamava, but beyond. So just thank you for your leadership and also just taking the time here today.
Oh, thank you, Kyle. Thank you for setting this up. You've done more than 20 of these and have done a great job. So I'm excited to talk to you today and provide you with some information.
All right. Thank you, Lawrence. I think it's a good place to always start with, I said your title, the CEO, you're highly respected within our industry. But for the first part of the conversation, I kind of want to connect the audience with kind of what we call the origin story, where LV grew up, what was your interest early in your career and kind of your career path to what you do today. So the 3 to 4 minute origin story for our viewers.
Sure. Well, I grew up in South Africa and lived there for the first part of my life, all the way through high school. I graduated high school in South Africa and then came over to the US in the mid-90s on a swimming scholarship and went to UNLV. And that's how I came to the US and graduated from UNLV in the early 2000s and started my career at Deloitte & Touche, or as known as Deloitte today, as in the accounting and audit functions. Spent about 7 years with Deloitte, mostly focusing on gaming-related public clients and real estate clients in Las Vegas. Most of the corporate entities were located in Las Vegas. So spent a few years auditing many of the strip companies and gaming companies. And after 7 years at Deloitte, I moved over to Las Vegas Sands. I followed a partner that left and the partner became the chief accounting officer. And he convinced me after a couple of crazy busy seasons at public accounting that there's a different way to proceed and have a career. And I started working for him and at Las Vegas Sands, and I was there for 5 years, working in various roles and doing different things for Las Vegas Sands, some for the Pennsylvania property at the time, Sands Bethwork, and then also some other corporate functions, and also for Venetian and Palazzo in Las Vegas. Did that for 5 years, and then they randomly got a call from a recruiter for San Manuel, and answered the call, not really looking to change my career, but 6 weeks later, I accepted a position, the CFO of Yamava Casino, San Manuel Indian Bingo and Casino at the time, and that was 9 years ago. So it's been a definitely an exciting and fun ride, and a lot happening, but very happy to be here at San Manuel today.
Yeah, and under your leadership, and I know since you've been here with the organization, there's been rapid growth, and I kind of want to pick your brain on that and a little later in our conversation. But so often with this platform, we get questions about, when people are unsure what they want to do, whether they're getting into the industry or maybe they just started. For you, going back when it was Deloitte, fresh out of college, when you were younger, did you always kind of have the sense that I wanted to be in finance and accounting, or just kind of early on as your career just started to begin, kind of what was your interest that kind of led you down that path?
I would say in the beginning part of my career, I was very interested in the finance and accounting side of it. Just understanding how everything is set up, how it's put together, how how departments are consolidated, how everything is set up from a company standpoint, and working for a place like Deloitte exposes you at a very early age to not just various levels within organizations, but also how everything works, right? Because you have to understand it, you have to be able to document it, you have to be able to report on it, and ultimately opine on the health of a business. And so I really enjoyed that part of my career and just gaining an understanding of how business works and how it's put together. But as I got more and dealt more with operations, that interested me a lot, and being able to apply the knowledge that I had as a finance or an accounting person really helped me. That was like a really good foundation for me, and to build operations on that, I think it was a great way for me to transition from finance to operations in the middle of my career.
So for those, who might be more on the analytics, finance, accounting, and maybe earlier in their career, kind of how did you make that transition of, as you were kind of progressing in your career through finance to eventually CFO and then CEO? Kind of any tips or anything stick out or come to the surface when you think about how you were able to leverage kind of that asset of, understanding finance and accounting to operations? How did you go about bridging that gap early in your career?
I think getting out of the office, right, and spending time with people that are not in your field. I think a lot of times in accounting and the finance world, tend to stick with people that think exactly like you and do things exactly like you. But if you step out of your office and start talking to operators, there's a lot that you can learn. And you also better understand their perspective, right? And that there's a lot more than just the accounting and the finance world, but the operational world is significantly different. And you can use that opportunity to help teach and coach them on the accounting and finance world, but their challenges and their worries are much different than somebody that's in accounting and finance. And spending time with them and understanding what their problems are and understanding issues from their perspective really helps, right? And so I think a key component is just getting out of your office, spending time with people, really trying to understand how they see the world and how they perceive the problem to be. It helps you grow as an individual and helps you make them better too. And you learn a lot through the process.
Was that something for you? Because another common question we get is personality types, right? Some people are more introverted. That's more difficult for them to do. Was there some key mentors or things that you observed to kind of push yourself out of that comfort zone, to get up, to walk around, to make those relationships? Or, did you kind of just force that upon yourself? Talk a little bit about how you went about. It's one thing to know that, to think about that, but to actually, do that behavior.
Yeah, I mean, between Las Vegas Sands and here at San Manuel, when I looked at some of the senior leaders and I looked at what made them successful, understood that having good relationships and having good interpersonal skills with people really help, right? If you build a relationship with somebody and really have sympathy and empathy for the issues that they go through, you create a certain level of trust that maybe other people don't have, and then they will open up to you, and then a lot of times that helps you solve problems. And so I think looking at some of the senior leaders within Las Vegas Sands, as I worked through many different departments there, became clear to me that relationships matter and how you treat people matter. And ultimately, if you want to solve issues, you're probably not going to find it in some book or some manual. It's going to be through treating people with respect and working with them to ultimately get to the solution that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And then LV, I kind of want to understand this because you've been in the gaming industry now, if my math's correct, like 15 years. Is that right? Roughly?
I really started at Deloitte, from an audit perspective, looking, working on audit companies in 2002. So it's really 21 years of being part of or associated with gaming. So more than 20 years.
Okay, so with that 20 years, broad question, take it where you want, but I think it's always insightful to understand kind of when you entered the industry, kind of what were your expectations? And then now, roughly 20 years later, can you speak to maybe the gap of what stayed the same and maybe also what's changed since you kind of began your career in gaming?
Well, I think the thing that stayed the same is that it's an exciting industry,
Yeah.
ever changing, and it's got so many different dynamics. I think what has changed is the specialization that it requires to be successful. Competition has increased significantly over the years, whether it's gaming or entertainment in general. And I think for an entity, enterprise, or company, a casino, to be successful, you have to be very specialized, whatever the function may be. More so than I think 20 years ago, right? Where I think in the beginning, maybe it'd be just about gaming, but now there's just so much more. You've got the food and beverage aspect, you've got the entertainment aspect, you've got the development aspect, you've got the database aspect. And if you're not good at all those functions and you're not specialized in all of them through talent that you acquire and that help you get there, you can't be the best. And so I think that's the thing that in my mind over the 20 years as I look back has changed significantly in how successful gaming enterprises have thrived is by being very good at their craft. And gaming, and whether it's travel game or commercial gaming, part of the reason why it's so exciting is because it's multiple businesses under one roof, right?
Yeah.
Which is very different from any other industry where it's maybe just one thing. There's many different facets to being successful today, and it's much more than just gaming.
LV, that's such a great point. I want to stay there for a minute because with that change of trying to understand here the specialization, right, and kind of the diversity now that's within gaming, from your role, right, the CFO, CEO, the different leadership hats you have worn, any words of advice or tips with that change, right? As you expand, as you kind of grow and working with teams, as you kind of onboard specialized people, promote people with this rapid growth and changing dynamics of the diversity of the skill sets, kind of as leaders or maybe new leaders out there, any words of advice to deal with that? Because that could be, you could have potential conflict there, right? With so many different individuals, so many different specialized skill sets. Anything come to mind of words of advice for leaders who might be overseeing kind of that rapid change?
I think ensuring that whoever you hire or we hire have bought into the culture and the strategy of where we're heading, right? I think spending enough time up front explaining to people what you're about and what the goals are to ensure that there's alignment, right? Because I think that's where some of the biggest issues are when people are not aligned up front, right, on what the vision is and what we're trying to achieve. And so a person may be very talented and very good at their craft, but if they have not bought into the culture or the strategy of the enterprise or the organization, I mean, things go south really quickly. So, and being upfront about it, right? I mean, Manuel has its specific culture and its goals, and we're very upfront on who we bring to the table to work with us to achieve those goals. And the people that we hire have bought into it and help us achieve the mission that the tribe has established. So I just think being very transparent and upfront about things is very important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just working for this organization, I've seen that through and through. With that growth that we've experienced, we've always tried to be transparent with all team members, right? Whether that's all team member meetings at every level, just trying to make sure everyone's aligned with the strategy. So I think that's great insight. Now let's, fast forward to today. I think a lot of people would look at that, your role, and just be like, how do I ever get to CEO? Maybe I want to be CEO. But if you wouldn't mind just starting with, your role today, and maybe in layman's terms, kind of as you look at your role of CEO, kind of what is that role and what does a typical day in the world of LV look like?
Ultimately, my role is to serve the tribe, right, and manage the tribe's assets, and really understanding what the tribe's vision is and where they want to be, long term and short term. And I specifically say that because Samuel, and I think tribes in general have a longer term vision, right? And so, really understanding what that vision is and ensuring that the tribe leads the charge there and saying, here's what we want to accomplish over the next 7 years or for the next generation. And then part of my role is to help establish a strategy to ultimately achieve that vision that the tribe wants to. And then hiring people and engaging people and motivating people to help execute on that strategy. That's kind of like at a very high level, right? Summarizing, but there's so much to that. But it comes down to ensuring that as an enterprise, we can execute upon what the tribe wants to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know this is hard to do because I'm sure there's no typical day where the day looks the same for you.
Yeah.
But just if you want to, maybe it's just, if you had to try to talk about what does a day in a CEO look like, what would you share?
I would say my week is broken up in really 2 or 3 kind of buckets. I would say Tuesdays through Thursdays, I spend quite a bit of time with the tribe, different committees, providing updates and just progress reports on what's going on, whether it's the investment board or the business committee or tribal utility authority. We have multiple meetings throughout every week, but those are usually between Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then Mondays and Fridays, I would spend more time with my team, usually planning for upcoming things. During the week, we would execute upon things, but there's a lot of kind of forward-looking, what's happening next month, what's happening next quarter, or even over the next 6 months. So preparing for future meetings or different opportunities. I'd say that's how my week is broken up, is some time with the team and making sure everybody's engaged and rowing in the right direction. But there's quite a bit of time that I spend with the tribe to make sure there's alignment with the enterprise of the tribe.
Yeah, and I could say alignment is something that you speak about, and I could say for sure it is executed here. So 2014 to 2020, 2023 now. I believe you started in June of 2014, around that time. If I were to ask you back then, right, as the CFO of Manuel Indian Bingo and Casino at the time, if my memory serves me right, and then where we are now with the Yamava expansion, the Palms, all the different strategies I know that we're doing as an organization, what would you have said if somebody would have told you that this career path would happen for you, and more importantly, this kind of growth would happen with the organization you're involved with?
I probably couldn't have dreamt this, right? I think it's been an absolute crazy, but also very enjoyable journey for me over the last 9 years. And a lot has happened. A lot of things we started talking about in 2014, 2015, but I mean, those were just kind of like dreams and this potentially could happen. But for many of those things to actually get executed upon over the last 2 years has been a remarkable journey for not only the tribe, but also for the team, right, that has been part of it over the last 6, 7, 8 years. And I mean, it's not like we started with nothing. The tribe has built, and previous leadership has built an unbelievable foundation for us to build on, starting in the 90s with the bingo hall, going into the 2000s with the first expansion, and just the way that the tribe conducted themselves and the decisions they made and how methodical they were in planning and not just jumping into the next, shiny, bright new thing. But they've really have taken the time to make decisions in the right way and hire a good leadership team in the mid 2014, 15, 16 time, and giving management a lot of flexibility to help execute on that vision that they have. And but I don't think I could have imagined the things that we're doing right now, right? I mean, those were real good ideas, and we were very excited about it. But to actually execute upon it and do that at a time where it wasn't the easiest time too, right, with COVID in the middle of it. But we didn't miss a beat. We went right through that, and we're able to execute upon it. And it's been an amazing journey.
And on the back end, right now, looking back, for behind the scenes, what makes that possible, right? If you had to think of like just in a nutshell, that those kind of lofty kind of dream and some of the vision that was out there, and to actually execute some of these big goals, kind of behind the scenes, what makes that possible?
I think the tribe leading the charge, ensuring that the tribe is comfortable and have approved the strategy. That's critical, right? Ensuring that there's alignment between where the enterprise is going and what the tribe wants, number one. And number two, there's got to be a lot of trust, confidence, and respect between leadership and management, right? And I think that develops over time. That does not happen overnight, right? And our leadership team here have that now, and it's been solidified over the last few years. And everybody understands each other's strengths and weaknesses and are good with that, and understand, that whose lane is where, and that sometimes somebody else may come in your lane and you're okay with that, right? But ultimately, we know the motives and the intent, and having a good leadership team like that I have to support me could not have done that. So the tribe leading the charge and a excellent management team and leadership team is what make these things possible.
Yeah, and I love that you kind of hit on the values. And one thing that I circled here was humility. I just watching it and experience it firsthand, I just feel like that's a hard thing to do. But to your point about transparency and alignment, that's kind of the expectation, right? Like if you work within this organization, it's a familiar environment, but also we leave our ego at the door, right? Yeah. So even though you have a great skill set and the specialization that you spoke about earlier, I could say that that's kind of echoed throughout, and that goes back to the transparency that you're talking about. But I think humility is a key aspect to that. So as you add folks and you grow, that everybody kind of rows in the same direction. LV, I'm curious to know, what's the most rewarding part of your position today? Like when you wake up in the morning, like what gives you the most kind of energy in your step, or what excites you the most? Just kind of what do you find the most rewarding today in your position?
Maybe I'll mention two things. I think one of the key things for me is being part of the journey of the tribe, right? And being able to provide meaningful input in their journey, right? As I participate in strategy and as they chart their course for the future. I mean, that's very, very rewarding. And another point would be just working with the people that I do, right? I mean, we work on some real cool things and get to do some amazing things, but there's also very difficult things that we have to work through. That's just part of leading an enterprise with 7,500 people and some complex things that happen in between, right? But having a really good group of people that support me and work alongside me, I mean, that makes your job actually pretty easy, right? So really twofold: being part of what the tribe is doing and their future, and then also working with great people.
LV, I've heard this, and I observe this with you too, and I know people work around you. You have a sense of calm, like as a leader, and I think other people can relate listening to this. We've all experienced just rapid change over the last few years and have had tough conversations and tough things to deal with. I think we can all relate on that front. But has that been something that's just always been innate to you, as far as this sense of calm, even during rapid change or times of stress? Just want to pick your brain there, because I can say as a leader, there's lots of strong skills that you have, but I think that's echoed that anybody who knows LV, there's just a certain sense of calm that you have, that steadiness. Is that something that you've just kind of always been wired that way, or where did that come from?
I think I am somewhat wired that way, but it's also part of it is being deliberate about that. I think it's easy to jump to conclusions when things get a little bit out of control. That you don't have control over, but you're just in the situation, and it's easy to quickly have to make a decision or think you have to. But what I found is that it's better to take a step back and really try to get to the bottom of it. Now, there's certain times that you have to make a decision and you can't analyze it, right? But also there's many times where you have to have patience and you have to take a step back. And you really got to talk to some of the multiple people that maybe have a better understanding of the situation than you. And I have found that, if you talk to two people, there's really two truths or three truths usually. That's the one person's opinion, the other person's opinion, and then there's the real truth, right? And so, or their interpretation, and then there's the real situation, right? And so, I just found that it's a better approach to take a step back, try to get the information from multiple people that have firsthand experience, and then use that information to make a judgment. And it's helpful to not, when you approach a situation, to be anxious, because it creates a lot of anxiety for the people that's part of the situation, right? And when you approach it to be in a calm demeanor, everybody calms down and people just think better, right? And so I think part of it is I'm wired, and part of it is just based on going through different times, and sometimes difficult times. I've learned that it's just a better approach to be calm than to be anxious, and people want that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think that's contagious. I think I've talked about this with a previous guest. Is I can't remember the study, but there was like an airport, and they just watched people in the field, and they would watch somebody who would be nervous, checking his phone, checking the time. People would exhibit that behavior around them because they'd be like, "Oh, am I late?" Yeah. So as a leader, I think it's totally contagious. If you're calm, the team's like, "Okay, we got this." But if you're frazzled, and I think that speaks so much, and I feel like that's key to your success. LV, I want to jump to a segment here we call the bigger picture, where I'll show a picture, and we just kind of riff on the picture. And for those listening via podcast, if you want to see the picture here, please go to nextlevelcasinocareers.com. But I'll kind of speak to it. It's real simple. It's two images here. It's Yamava grand opening in December of 2021. And then we have an image here of a lot of folks who are key stakeholders in the tribe, and a lot of people involved with the Palms opening. So for you, the CEO, we've talked a little bit about this growth and some of the amazing things that have been accomplished. But for you, I just want to understand what goes through your head as these milestones happen for the tribe, right? As we diversify, or the expansion project, and the list goes on and on and on. But for you as CEO, as these accomplishments happen, what goes through your head on major milestone days like these?
Today or back then?
Back then. And then they'll do both, because that's a great point.
Yeah,
so let's start with we can start wherever you want, but just what's kind of your mindset then, the day of, and then also now that you've had some time to digest, what are some thoughts there?
Well, you're a little bit overwhelmed on those days, because we thought about it and discussed it for many, many, many hours and thousands of hours, and dealt with so many different obstacles. And I mean, even to this day, when I walk through Yamava and the Palms, I think about the times when, for Yamava, when it was ground up and it was just foundation, there was nothing, and I could still see it, and then I see a bar that's at a location that was just nothing, right? And so, but at the time when we did this, a little bit of, you're just overwhelmed, and it happens so quickly that you really don't enjoy it as much as you really should, because there's so much work to get to the opening, and then the opening happens and it's over, and then you're like, okay, we're gonna move on to the next thing. But thinking back, I mean, I'm very proud of what we accomplished, what the team accomplished and what we were able to do with the help of the tribe is, to do things that, 2 years ago, we had almost no experience in entertainment and hotels. And today we've got 2 fully integrated resorts with, that significantly changed what Samuel and the business enterprises are. And so there's a lot of pride and just a sense of achievement and very, very happy that we were able to accomplish these things. But that week, if I look at these pictures, I think about that week in December where I think Tuesday we opened Yamava, and on Thursday we got the license for the Palms, and we had to go right into start prepping to get that open. So that was a pretty crazy week in December in 2021 when we went through all this. But just it just gives you a sense of accomplishment. It gives you a lot of confidence, and when you've gone through things like that, and you look at other things that's in front of us, and you go, well, the first time you do it, you're like, ooh, this is from ground up all the way from day one through when we open. You sometimes question, are we going to be able to do this? But now that we've done it and it's behind us, it just gives you a lot of confidence with the team that we have in place and just what we've established to be able to take on even bigger and better things.
Yeah, and then I remember that the Yamava opening, there was rain in the forecast, and we were watching it so closely, and we were like, had all these contingency plans, but thank goodness that we lucked out. The rain started, I think, almost immediately after we had our entertainment. But yeah, I totally understand that perspective as far as like the day of, you have so many thoughts, but then being able to digest later. And I love some of the things that you said there.
But we had, that day we had a great team in place. Peter and Kenji and team had contingency plans in place. I remember we tracked the clouds and we're like, okay, we can't be outside, we can do it inside. But those are all things that really help you take on big things, because having a good team that's always forward-looking and proactive, you can take on the world.
Yeah, and it goes early to the earlier point about just being adaptable and flexible, because we can't control the weather. I think we heard this quote from a guest speaker, and apologies if I'm butchering it here, but I think it was along the lines of, you can't control the field that you play on, but you can control how you play.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what happened that day. But luckily, those contingency plans didn't need to happen. But for those listening, I think that's important. And it goes to speak about that leadership, about being calm. One more question here on this topic, LV. We've talked a little bit about some of the rapid growth, the mindset, and the individuals you need behind it to make those things happen, and also obviously the leadership of the tribe. But from your perspective, one thing that I know is it's really hard as you expand. You can go outside the casino industry, you can use several, but as you kind of grow, naturally what tends to happen is complacency. And, how is it for you as a leader and just within this organization to fight that? Because as much as people say, no, we don't do that, that's kind of the natural business thing that happens. So kind of how do you go about fighting that complacency that most businesses fall into when they experience this kind of growth?
I think outside, I could speak specifically as we approach things at Samuel and with the tribe. And I think one thing that prevents that from happening here is our kind of vision and planning towards just the long term, right? We spend quite a bit of time talking to the tribe about the next 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to plan for what happens 20 years from now. But if there's a certain kind of place you want to be in 20 years from now, then you could start breaking that into, increments of what we do 7 years, right? And then you can break that 7 years into annual budgets, right? And so we don't spend a ton of time talking about what are we going to do next year or the budget, because the budget's just a stepping stone to get to where we need to be in 7 years, and 7 years is a stepping stone to get to where we are in where the tribe wants to be in 20 years. And so what's I think different with San Manuel is we've gone through this first 7 years, and it's been about 6 years, and we've achieved almost all of the goals, or we're about to achieve almost all of the goals that we've set 6 years ago with the tribe. And that gives us a lot of confidence to now work through the next 7-year plan with the tribe and continue to move towards and have a reason, not just change for change's sake, but have like a long-term destination where we want to get at, and make sure that everything that we do within the organization aligns with where we want to be 7 years from now. And so it's much more organic in nature in how we move forward, and methodical too. It's not just, well, we've got to do something new because it's the right thing to do. No, it's part of a longer term plan. And again, the people that we engage and the people that we have working for us, we try to communicate that, whether it's through the vice president meetings that we have, or with the director meetings, or even the meetings with all employees. We have an opportunity to bring employees along and tell them this is why we're doing what we're doing, right? Maybe this year, not specifically 2023, but just as an example, maybe this year there's not going to be a ton of new openings, but here's where we are in our journey, and this is the plan, right? And so bring people along, helping them understand what the tribe's journey is important. So that's what makes it exciting. I don't think there's any time where we go, okay, what are we going to do for the next year or two? I'm pretty clear on where the tribe wants to be, what the challenges will be over the next few years, and what the opportunities are going to be. It's just making sure we communicate that back to the organization is important, so everybody understands where we are in the tribe's journey.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And some key nuggets that, I kind of wrote down is that long-term planning, but within that long-term planning to be able to, as I, methodical, intentional, right? All these things are strategic. They're not just, oh, let's just pivot or switch here.
Yeah.
And then also making sure that all team members and everybody involved kind of is along for the ride and knows the journey that we're on. And it's been amazing to witness that and be a part of that, even on a small level. So LV, I want to ask, you said 2023. As you think about just the year, the outlook and beyond, kind of what are your thoughts being a gaming leader as you look at the 2023 outlook? And then also just looking ahead, and anything you want to provide on that front?
I think from a San Manuel perspective, 2021, 2022 were years where we've significantly changed what we're working on and added a lot to our plate. And so thinking through how we can do things better, how we could be more efficient, are things that we're going to focus on in 2023. We're going to continue to look at opportunities. I mean, the economy, there's a lot of people that think there's it's difficult times ahead of us just because of macroeconomic activities and interest rates and things that may make deploying capital difficult. But we also look at those times as times that are times with good opportunities. And so we continue to look and execute upon the longer term economic development plan of the tribe. And so we're evaluating opportunities right now in the hospitality space, which is very exciting. And we'll move forward with some of those. So between looking at the current assets and what we added to our plate right now, and being better at operating those, and looking at new opportunities are things that we're focusing on in 2023. And then, as I just mentioned earlier, thinking about the next 7-year plan for the tribe. The long-term plan is where we spend a lot of time with the business committee and tribal leaders right now, and even the tribe at large, right? Getting the input, discussing with them some of the challenges that we see on the horizon, some of the opportunities, and the reason why we need to grow and continue to expand, are discussions that we're having right now. So I think there are some things that we can talk about that may make the environment difficult, but there's more things to be excited about in 2023, and it's going to be another great year for San Manuel.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I think a nugget that people could take is, trying to find that opportunity, even with the things that might be out of your control. But I still think even within a potential recession, there's probably opportunity there. So to have that mindset, I think that's a key insight for people listening. LV, thank you for joining today. I got just a couple more questions, a little more quick and personal in nature. I know you're a father. I know that's one of your favorite roles, probably your favorite role. But I'm curious to know, I think you have 3 kids. What has being a father and a dad provided you that's made you a better leader?
Maybe that's why I have so much patience.
I
I definitely that has given me, a different perspective on patience, right? And there is no blueprint or manual on raising kids, and so my wife and I have our hands full, but we're extremely blessed to have 3 awesome kids, twin boys, and my daughter, and being part of their lives and being deliberate about that is very important to me, and so I try to spend at least the mornings with them and take them to school, and then attend as many events that they have as I possibly can. My boys play baseball. My daughter took on volleyball, so those are not sports that either my wife or I did, and so we're learning a lot just going through their journey. And I mean, there's so much that you can teach kids about life through sports, and that they can take with them. So it's definitely been given me and my wife a lot of satisfaction raising our kids and spending a lot of time with them.
love that you mentioned sports. If you had to boil down, because I think you said you were a swimmer.
Yeah.
And swimmer, is that more of an individual sport, a team sport? I guess what I'm getting at is, if there's one essential thing that sports background or swimming taught you and you apply today, what would that be? What did you pick up from, playing sports?
I would say, 2 things. Sports taught me a lot of discipline, right? And hard work pays off in sports. At the end of the day, if you put in the work, you pick the fruits, and if you don't, you don't, right? And humbleness too teaches you to lose, right? And sometimes that's part of life, right? Part of work is you don't always win, and there's times that things don't work out the way you should, and you go back to the drawing board and you figure it out and pick yourself back up and move forward. So discipline, humbleness, and just taught me a lot of how to have grit in life.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I have my oldest is 5 years old, and we're trying to teach him how to lose, and that lesson's not going so well. So we'll try to keep exposing him, and hopefully within time, pick up some of those traits. Any New Year's resolutions? The year just started. Any New Year's resolutions that you have?
I don't necessarily, every year I kind of take inventory and kind of plan for the year, and spend some time with my wife kind of talking about different things. And I kind of put it into 2 or 3 categories. One is like family and faith related. One is health related, right? And setting some goals of events that I want to participate in every year. And so this year I've picked a few things that I'm working towards from just a health perspective and events perspective, and then also work related, right? And thinking some work related goals, and some of those are not necessarily all. Some of it's just having better work life balance, right? Those are things that the goals I'll set for myself and discuss with my wife, but that's kind of evergreen goals that kind of dust off every year and say, okay, how can we do things better this year than last year?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. A skill you have not mastered that you admire in others?
I would say having good perspective sometimes, right? I admire when people can approach things or situations with good perspective, and I think I'm getting better at that. But sometimes you get so bogged down with the details of the issue that, in the big scheme of things, it's probably not that big of a deal. But having good perspective is something that I'm trying to work towards and be better at.
I appreciate you sharing that. Fill in the blank. LV 2033, so 10 years from now. Finish this quote, the thing that you'll say in 2033. What we underestimated the most in 2023 was what?
The rapidness of change, how quickly things have changed. I mean, should have learned that over the last 10 years. Hopefully, wouldn't be too surprised 10 years from now. But if I think about how much things have changed in the industry and for Samuel over the last 10 years, there's probably a lot that's going to just change in the industry and in gaming and just tribal operations over the next 10 years. So I think change is going to probably surprise us all.
Yeah, and it always does. And I like that you pointed that out. I think we can all think of I think we all remember when Uber first came on the scene. It was like, if you would have told somebody, yeah, just some stranger's going to pick you up in your car. Did they work with a tax company? No, they're just going to use their car. At first it was so weird, but how quickly we all shifted from that. And then it just dominated and it totally changed, that sector. And those kind of stories are all out there as far as just rapid change. Maybe there's little clues, but it just happens so quickly. A subject or hobby that you nerd out on outside of work that maybe people don't know about?
I'll go back to my kids. I think somewhat obsessed with baseball and understanding it. I didn't grow up playing it.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, if you asked me about it, I probably would have said it's silly, right? But I'm with my boys playing it and being very active in it. It is something that I've learned to love this sport. And there's so much to it with all the statistics and the people and the players and the teams and just the journey of it. It's pretty awesome. And my daughter recently picked up volleyball, and it's another one that I didn't really know much about it, and I've learned so much about it over the last year or so, and just being part of their journeys and living, experiencing that through their eyes. And it's so new to both my wife and I. It's probably the thing we spend most time on. I spend most time on outside of work, because that's what we do on our weekends, which is maybe a good thing to just have some balance.
Yeah, absolutely. To immerse yourself. And I think as a parent, and that's something I look forward to, is, even seeing it at the young age, when you see them kind of find passion, you just want to support that, right? Especially in activities like that really, teach life skills, no matter if they go play at the collegiate level or beyond, no matter if it's a hobby, a sport, no matter what it is. So favorite quote, or maybe if you don't have a favorite quote, like a favorite quote, and why?
Ooh, I think there's probably two that I can think of. One is from a board member of ours, but also somewhat of a mentor for me, Bob Bogner. And he likes to remind me and tell me that it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. I think that's a quote that I recently heard from him, and it's resonated with me. And he's been very successful in his career, but he's one of the nicest guys. But he's also been one of the most important guys in Las Vegas. But he really gave a good example on that. And another one that I saw at some math class that my kids had. They went to some extra math class, and there was a saying on the board, and it was, everyone must choose one of two pains: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. So that's another one that it hit me when I read it, and it's so true, right? You either have to go through the pain of discipline, or if you don't, then there's going to be regret. So like to choose discipline instead.
Yeah, that's a great quote. And I think I've heard one similar to that is discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. Yeah. So even though there's resistance both ways, that regret's going to hit a little harder. So those are great quotes. And Bob Bogner, he's been a past guest. So for those listening, please make sure you check out that episode via podcast or the website. LV, once again, thanks for taking the time. I'm going to get you out of here on the final question we ask everybody, which is, this is all just trying to help people take their career to the next level. So for you, if you were going to provide 3 tips to somebody that they could start applying today to take their career to the next level, what would those 3 tips be?
Number one, attitude, right? Attitude, showing up with the right attitude is critical, right? I mean, I've worked with a lot of people over my career, a lot of smart people with bad attitudes, and that usually don't work out, right? So I think and just showing up with the right attitude makes a huge difference, right? People want to be around you, and people want to put you in places because you can apply that attitude to any problem and probably solve it, right? So attitude is critical. Number 2 is find value where you can, right? One of my pet peeves are if people point to their job description and say, that's not my job description, right? I mean, it's just, you're not going to go anywhere. I mean, you may be successful in a certain area, but if you really want to grow and be part of leadership, you have to be able to find value and look outside of your silo, outside of your job description, and put your hand up and be willing to be uncomfortable, right? And learn something new and be able to apply the skill set that you have to that. But just don't focus on what you're good at. And then the last one is grit. You have to have some grit and resiliency and just a willingness to endure some tough times, because it's not all fun and games as you work throughout your career and climb the ladder. There's going to be some seasons of toughness, and if you just always think about what's in it for me, it doesn't work out. So I think it's important to have grit and be able to work through those things, because people see that and you get acknowledged, and it pays off to work through things. So attitude, find value where you can, and have grit. Those are my 3 recommendations.
And that is how it's done. Those are awesome parting words. LV, before we wrap here, I just want to say thanks again. I found this valuable. I know our audience will. And thanks for just taking the time and doing everything that you do. And hopefully we get to do it again sometime.
Perfect. Thank you, Kyle. It's great talking to you. Have a good
Thanks,
one.
LV. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Check out more episodes on nextlevelcasinocareers.com.